Hi there, it's Nicole Spohr, and today I'm sharing a no-line card featuring colored pencils. So we're going to do no-line coloring with colored pencils using this fabulous STAMPtember collaboration set from Simon Says Stamp and Colorado Craft Company. And it's this wonderful 6x8 stamp set that has this image of legs with all these different dancing girls and then lots and lots of different sentiments that you can use to build your card. I am going to do a landscape style card here, and I have positioned my image and the two sentiment phrases I want to use with my image so that I kind of can gauge exactly where I want to stamp this. And I'm going to use some Simon Says Stamp embossing ink to stamp this image a couple of times. This image has not been stamped before, so I did stamp it more than once because I wanted a fairly dark outline to do my no-line coloring with. I also opted to use a colored cardstock. This is the Hues PEBBLE cardstock, probably one of my very favorite colors from Hero Arts. Probably one of my favorite colors from any company. It's a fantastic basic. Now that I have these dancing girls' legs stamped, I'm going to start coloring with some Polychromos Colored Pencils. And I'm simply going to just kind of lay down my color first, and then I'll go back over this and really color it in a little bit nicer, or a little bit darker. I really went light to begin with, and I'm going to use a lot of white for my highlights, and that's going to go for all areas of this image. One of the keys to successful colored pencil coloring of any kind is to have really sharp pencils. I like to keep my pencil sharpener right next to me while coloring so that I can frequently grab that and resharpen my pencils as they do dull really fast, and I like the tips to be very sharp. I'm also using a dry paintbrush to move away any of the colored pencil flakes on the image so that I'm not smearing those. We're going to do the skirt next in some really fun pinks: fuchsia, pink madder lake, and pink carmine with a little white for highlights. Again, all of these colors are Polychromos Colored Pencils. I have listed them across the bottom of the screen for easy reference, and I've also listed them on the blog post. So if you visit my blog, there is a link here in the video description. You can find that information typed out in the text of the blog post. I know a lot of you like to reference that, or if you see a color combination and you want to know exactly what that is, that's an easy way to find that information without having to maybe re-reference the video if you don't want to. White over the top is always great for adding highlights. I felt like that was maybe a little too much highlight, so I actually went back in with some of my pinks. Again, just going to keep cleaning that off. I can go back over the skin as many times as I need to. For the top, I opted to do kind of a plummy purple color with magenta and middle purple pink, and then of course white. And as I add all this color, it really just brings the image to life. So super cute and fun. I absolutely love these collaboration sets from Simon Says Stamp and all of our favorite stamp manufacturers through the month of September for the STAMPtember event. Now, if you like this look, Colorado Craft Company has lots and lots of great stamp sets. They all feature kind of leg images. So there's lots of sets for different occasions and holidays and all of that good stuff. So you can definitely create a very similar look with any of the stamp sets in their collection. I love them. I think it's a very unique company, a unique look for stamps. And I hope this maybe has inspired you to check them out and just kind of see what they are all about and take a look at all of their fantastic stamp sets. We're going to move on to the next girl now, and we're just going to do a little bit darker skin tone here. And I gradually worked that color up because you can see right here it's not looking that great. I really had to kind of work and work and work at this to get it exactly the way I wanted it to look. This dress also has a ton of detail, and I did try to keep that detail in, but ultimately I opted to color over it, and I'm so glad I did. I think this doesn't translate super well with no line coloring, something that's this detailed. At least it didn't for me, or maybe it was the color combination I used. So I wanted to do this dress red with kind of a yellow undertone or a yellow design to it. That was my original thought. And so I went in and kind of traced out the dress with my dark red, and then I'm going to trace over the design and the pattern with yellow. And I kept this in the video because I really wanted you to see how I transformed this image, because when you look at the finished card at the beginning of the video or at the end of the video, you might think it looks nothing like this, and you'd be right, it does not. I did not redo my card. I actually just managed to fix it or kind of move past and work past any problem I had with the coloring. Now, when I colored over this originally, you could still see quite a bit of the design. I just didn't love it. I'll be honest, I did not love how it was turning out at all. And I was really afraid I was going to have to start over. I had left my stamp in the MISTI. I knew I could come back to it if I needed to, but I didn't want to. I've already colored 1/3 of this image, and so I decided to persevere, and I ended up kind of going over this multiple times with my markers, building that red color, and ultimately taking an ivory pencil and adding my highlight with the ivory and deepening and darkening my reds. And what happens is those yellow areas end up being more of a highlight underneath the red of the dress. I even went over with my dark yellow as well, and it actually ends up working super, super well. I was very happy with how this ended up, and ultimately I'm really glad that I was able to salvage this. So let's give her some cute little knee-high white socks. Just lay down a little white. We'll lay down some gray and some warm gray for shadowing and shading. I did come back to her shoes later, almost too much later, because I am going to color in and make the background and the ground underneath their feet. I drew all of that in with my colored pencils. That isn't a stamped image. One thing I really like to do is scene build. If you follow me at all, you probably know that. So even when creating an image like this where I am doing a one-layer card, I am not stamping and masking and adding a background with stamps or anything like that. I am actually just going to draw that in with my colored pencils. So here is the ground. I started with that. Again, I'm using dark sepia, which is that dark gray color, warm gray, and white. And I'll come back to that. I'll keep working on it and building the color. Sometimes I feel like no line coloring is constantly a work in progress. I never quite feel finished. I always see something that I can go back and, you know, add more detail, add more color and layers and things like that too. So I've colored in the final girl's skin tone. I'm just going to sharpen up my pencils real quick, and I even kind of went back over that second dress just along the top edge to smooth that out. And now we're going to do blues with the helioblue-reddish, cobalt blue, and light cobalt turquoise, and then of course white for our highlights. And that's going to round out our design. And really, I think it balances out the colors used really nicely. We're going to do the little dance dress or tutu and the ballet slippers with these colors. I kind of like to trace out with my dark color and then just put down a light bit of color all over the image and then simply blend out with my additional colors. And I'm going to keep working those until I get the shading just so. Make sure and go back in with my white, adding detail around the top part of the dress. Kind of saved the top part of her dance costume for later, just because I knew it was a little more detailed and I wanted to add in a little bit more white up there. So I purposely just kind of kept that until the end. Go in with a little more white, a little more light blue, and I can add additional detail with a white pen after bit. So let's kind of move away any of those colored pencil flakes from our project. Keep resharpening my pencils as well. Love these little bands from the ballet slippers that go around her ankles. I think those are really fun. We'll just build that color up for both of her ballet slippers there, adding lots of white for highlight. Go back over anything that I felt like needed a little more shading or something like that, the skin tone. Go back over the ground with my pencils. And then I'm going to take a T-square ruler and simply draw in some lines. Now, I made a critical error here, and I'm going to leave it in because, again, I have colored all of this. I don't want to start over. I should not have continued that line up above the girl images. It's only partial body images, so that's going to look a little weird. If there's lines in the wall, because I kind of was trying to build this really fun wall back behind, and I did not notice it until I'm like coloring away. I drew that in with my gray. I'm adding some white, and as I'm coloring here and adding the color, it's about here that I realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So I only color to the top of the images for the rest of this. And I'm actually going to take a Tombow mono eraser and I erased what I could. You can see I could not get rid of everything, but I'm still going to salvage this project. And I think it's important to leave that in case you're working on something and you're looking for a way to salvage something that you've worked an hour on, which is what I did. And you can see there I've built the wall back behind, but there's still those little lines. No problem. I'm actually going to ink around the edges with black soot Distress Oxide ink, kind of creating that vignette look so that your eye focuses in on those great, gorgeous colors of the girls' dance costumes. It's going to disguise some of the lines, but not completely get rid of them. Especially along the sides, I don't mind them coming up a little higher. I think it looks a little more natural even. So it disguises that enough. Just going to add a little bit more colored pencil down here below. Any finishing details I'm trying to take care of now because the next thing I'm going to do is stamp and emboss my sentiments. Remember at the beginning of the video I had two phrases from this Lovely Legs 6x8 stamp set, and I want to stamp one up above, which again is going to be another great tool to help disguise my little error there, and then one below. So we're going to have two of those, and it's just going to balance out the design really nicely. And I'm still working on shading because I want to do all of that before I add my embossing powder. I'm also giving that Distress Oxide ink a chance to dry, but I'm going to tell you, I did go ahead and take my heat tool and hit this panel because I was really afraid of the Distress Oxide ink not being dry and embossing powder sticking to it and messing up all of this cute image that took a little bit of time to color in. So I'm going to center those. I'm just eyeballing it. I did not measure it. So I've got one phrase up above that reads, "It's your day to sparkle and shine." And then underneath it's going to read, "Dance with your heart, your feet will follow." I'm going to go ahead and I did heat set this, and real quick before I stamp and emboss, I did take a white pen and I'm adding in some little highlight detail and things over the colored pencil on the skirts and outfits of the girls. When I'm doing a one-layer card, anything that I can do to add some extra texture and interest, I think it's really important, because while this might be one layer and it doesn't have all the depth and dimension that some cards have, I think that it feels like it has a lot of depth and dimension, and it's very eye-catching with the colors against the neutral background. We've added in some colored pencil background. We've added some shading around the edges to create that vignette. And then we're, of course, going to add some splatter over the top and our stamped and embossed sentiment. So here's my heat tool, and I'm simply just going to hit this real fast. Again, I was super worried that that ink might not be all the way dry. And then we're going to use a powder tool as another way to kind of help keep that embossing powder hopefully right on our sentiments. And then ink these up with the Simon Says Stamp Clear Embossing ink. Just make sure that's pressed really nice and firm. And then we'll take our white embossing powder and sprinkle that on. I know I mentioned it in quite a few videos, but I'm a huge fan of white embossing powder. I think it just really pops. It's my most often used embossing powder. I want to say color, but it's white. But I really love how it looks. And especially on this PEBBLE cardstock that has the black soot inked edges, very eye-catching. Once my heat tool is really good and warm, and it was still pretty warm from drying my panel, I can take it to my cardstock. If you make sure your heat tool's warm before you bring it to your project, it's going to reduce warping. So I always recommend letting it heat up for about 30 to 60 seconds. Here are all the colors of colored pencils I used. Kind of a nice assortment there. Again, those have been listed throughout the video, and they will also be listed on the blog post that accompanies this project. I've got some PICKET Fence Distress Paint that I watered down with a little bit of water. Not a lot, just a little, because I want those to be pretty opaque splatters. And then I'm simply going to splatter that kind of around especially the edges of the card. I'm concentrating it around the edges to finish this up, and then I'm going to let that set and air dry. It does not take too terrible long, but I did not hit that with a heat tool or anything like that. I just let it sit and air dry. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this no-line coloring card featuring Polychromos Colored Pencils. The supplies I used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a card making or paper crafting video. Here are a couple more cards featuring no-line coloring that you might be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Please be sure to check back every day through September, as it's the big STAMPtember event at Simon Says Stamp, and I'll be sharing new videos with you almost every day this month. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.